the city council meeting into order. And the first item of business is the pledge, and Mr. Pendleton has agreed to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you for being here tonight. Next item is our agenda, invocation. Kirk Blackslow of the Erath County Ministerial Alliance. You play a lot of hats, don't you?
Yeah, quite a few,
There you
just
go.
like all you guys. A lot of hats, but so good to be here in this capacity tonight and just do what we do. We thank God for all that He's done for us and blessed us with, and so let's pray to Him. Father God, we say thank you. Thank you for all the presentations and proclamations that are going to be given tonight for all the good things your citizens are doing here in Stephenville. Lord, we thank you for the growth. We see the work of the Zoning and Planning Commission, and that means growth is happening. Thank you, Lord. Lord, we see the work of the Personnel Committee as they try to provide fair and equitable wages to our city employees. For all of our city staff and employees, we say thank you. For the work of our mayor and city council, we say thank you. On behalf of the citizens of this great city, for all the agenda items and the things yet to come, we want to take a moment before we begin and just say thank you. Help us, Lord, to be people that are thankful, but also, Lord, help us to be people that are obedient. Because you know, with obedience comes breakthrough, and with breakthrough we see more blessings. And we just ask, God, that you would bless this great city. Help us, Lord. We do all these things for your glory and for your honor. And it's in your mighty name, Lord Jesus, we pray. Amen.
We have a packed agenda item tonight, and the first item is a set of recognitions and presentations. Number 5 on your agenda we're going to pull because of an illness. So the first item is recognizing Erath County Fire Department's chief. Yeah, I'm going to sit up here and read up here, and we'll take pictures in a minute.
Well, Mayor and Council, thank you for the opportunity to come before you tonight. I want to make a few introductions. Chris Brooks is the fire coordinator for Erath County Fire Rescue. Chris Elson is our lieutenant with us, helps us run operations in Stephenville. Scott Brinkley is a training captain with Stephenville and helps us run administration. As you know, the 17th of last month, Eastland County had one of the largest and most destructive fires, individually deadly fires, in the history of Eastland County. Many units in Erath County got pulled into that operation and worked for literally weeks. It drew our resources close together at the management point to see what was going on, because we were trying to plan for what would happen if it came into Erath County. And 3 days later, what became known as the Big L fire occurred out by Bluffdale, burning toward La Pan. When that fire came in, these two gentlemen up front went out and took literally command of that fire, along with some Texas Forest Service resources that eventually showed up and brought in some support. But those 3 days between the Eastland complex breaking out and the Big L breaking out, we drew together very closely, knowing that we were going to be working together very quickly, and it paid off tremendously. Although there were many structures and some cattle lost, it was contained. The Big L fire was contained to 11,000 acres. Although it wasn't the largest, it was one of the larger fires in Erath County. But again, it's been a big operation. Still, we are studying some of the outcomes, but I'll tell you now, it has drawn all the resources within Erath County close together, and we are stronger for it today. But thank you again for allowing us to come before you tonight.
Appreciate that. Let me read the proclamation. It's a proclamation recognizing the collaboration of Erath County firefighters. Whereas on March 17th, 2022 at 6:42 p.m., what would become known as the Eastland Complex Fire began. And whereas the Eastland Complex Fire, which burned over 54,500 acres in 13 days, was the largest wildfire in Eastland County history. And whereas on March 20th, 2022 at 1:26 p.m., the Big L Fire started in Erath County and ultimately burned over 10,000 acres in 10 days. And whereas these wildfires, while catastrophic to property and livestock, brought the residents of Erath County and the surrounding areas together to provide support for the victims of these two devastating fires. And whereas not only did private citizens come together to help their neighbors in times of need, but multiple volunteer, city, county, and state fire agencies banded together to prevent further loss of life, property, and livestock. Therefore, I, Doug Savine, Mayor, on behalf of the City Council of the City of Stephenville, Texas, do hereby recognize and honor the efforts of the following agencies for their selflessness and bravery. We mentioned those: Bluffdale Volunteer Fire Department, the Dublin Volunteer Fire Department, Erath County EMS, Erath County Fire and Rescue, Harbin Volunteer Fire Department, Hyco Volunteer Fire Department, Huckabee Volunteer Fire Department, Lingleville Volunteer Fire Department, Morgan Mill Volunteer Fire Department, Selden Volunteer Fire Department, and the Stephenville Fire Department. And I'd like to encourage the residents of Stephenville and Erath and surrounding counties to show their appreciation to the men and women who came together to protect their neighbors. That's presented this 5th day of April 2022. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you. I'll probably just go down there and read all these. Next one is Stop the Silence. And Chief, you're going to them all this one. Okay. Let me read it for you. Come on up here. When you read it, come stand up here in front. I'm sorry. You got to stand up here in front. We've already taken pictures. So come up here. Both of you. There you go. This is a great proclamation. I appreciate this so much. Whereas National Crime Victims Week was established in 1981 by President Ronald Reagan as part of an effort to bring attention and support to victims of crime, and is being observed the week of April 24th through 30th, 2022, with the theme of Rights, Access, Equity for All Victims, to recognize victims of crime in the United States. National Crime Victims Week provides an opportunity to recommit to ensuring that accessible, appropriate, and trauma-informed services are offered to all victims of crime. And whereas in 1983, April was designated as National Child Abuse Prevention Month, and our community acknowledges that we must work together as a community to increase awareness about child abuse and contribute to promote the social and emotional well-being of children and families in a safe, stable, and nurturing environment. And whereas National Sexual Assault Awareness Month was finally nationally recognized in April 2001 as an effort to bring awareness about sexual assault and educate communities and individuals on prevention of sexual violence. And whereas our community has dedicated individuals and organizations who work daily to counter the problems and provide resources to victims of violent crimes, child abuse and neglect, and sexual assault. And whereas the passage of the Victims' Crime Act of 1984 and through the dedicated work of advocates, lawmakers, and victim service providers, there is a growing array of services and resources available to victims and their loved ones. And whereas Stop the Violence has created to combine awareness of these causes in Erath County, now therefore reaffirming this, the City of Stephenville, City of Dublin, Erath County, Tarleton State University commit to creating a victim service and criminal justice response that assists all victims of crimes throughout the year, and do hereby proclaim the week of April 24th through 30th, April 30th, 2022 as Crime Victims' Rights Week, presented this 21st day of April, or a little bit early, this 21st day of April, 2022. Thank you all.
So our event is April 21st this year at the courthouse at 5:30. We had to move it up a little bit because of other events in the community. Here's our flyer. We also have t-shirts. We do have t-shirts for sale should you desire a t-shirt. And they are available at Cross Timbers Family Services here on the square. I'm Laura Gambino with Cross Timbers Executive Director, and we thank you for allowing us to come before you today. And we invite you to participate with us and come together as a community on the 21st in the courthouse square. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item is World Autism Awareness Day and World Autism Month. The Chief is going to start off the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, distinguished members of the council. This month is Autism Awareness Month, as you mentioned, and very special to us because not only does it affect approximately 5 million people in the United States currently, and it's the fastest growing developmental disorder. 1 in 54 children are affected by this disorder. It has a unique meaning to us, not only in our response to those with needs, but as a police family. So this month is the month that we lost Sergeant Stephen Watts, an over 25-year veteran of the Stephenville Police Department, whose son falls into this spectrum, and his widow, Jenny, who is here with us today. And so what I'm about to present to each of you is a special commemorative shoulder patch that we will wear this month because we want to show our love, support, and understanding to those affected by the autism spectrum. And we're going to raise awareness throughout this month on how you can appropriately respond to those and interact with those publicly. So we'll be doing some special in-service training during this month, and we greatly appreciate you in this proclamation.
Thank you. Let me read the proclamation. The proclamation in recognition of World Autism Awareness Day and World Autism Month. Whereas autism spectrum disorder affects an estimated 1 in 44 U.S. children and in 1 in 45 U.S. adults, and is a complex condition that affects each person differently, resulting in unique strengths and challenges. And whereas autism can cause challenges with verbal and nonverbal communication, social interaction, and repetitive behaviors, and can affect anyone, regardless of race, ethnicity, gender, or socioeconomic background. And whereas autism is often accompanied by medical conditions that impact quality of life. And whereas a comprehensive, collaborative approach will help to advance research, providing a better understanding of the many forms of autism, strengthening advocacy efforts, and ensure access to services and resources throughout the lifespan and across the spectrum. And whereas early diagnosis and intervention tailored to individual needs can have lifelong benefits, easing the transition to adulthood and fostering greater independence. And whereas each person and family affected by autism should have access to reliable information and support. And whereas people with autism should have opportunities to reach their full potential, and the whole of society stands to benefit from this. And whereas the city of Stephenville is honored to take part in the annual observance of World Autism Month and World Autism Awareness Day to address the diverse needs of individuals with autism and their families and encourage others to do so well. I, therefore, Doug Savine, Mayor, on behalf of the City Council of the City of Stephenville, Texas, do hereby proclaim April 2020 as World Autism Month and April 2nd, 2022 as World Autism Awareness Day. Signed this day, April 5th. We can give this to the family.
Chief, will you not take a picture?
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, sir.
There's a speech therapist. I'm glad we did that today. Okay. We left off the general citizens discussion off the agenda, but we're gonna go ahead and have that. Is anybody here? We're gonna do it under buckles and bugs, okay. Leanne?
We have Luke Sims and Craig Allen here tonight to do the presentation, the Buckles and Bugs Festival that was March 18th downtown here, and then 19th down at the City Park at Birdsong was a great event. We had, I'll do a longer presentation on it when we have all the data back and everything, but they, Charlie Diggs was the promoter. He actually gifted the city with this wonderful guitar, and Luke and Craig gifted us with a beautiful belt buckle. So, if y'all would come up and let's, and I'm sorry. And then they also, would you rather give the part about the raising the?
Sure, absolutely. So the whole idea behind Buckles and Bugs was for the benefit of Stephenville and the people from Stephenville, our citizens. And we wanted to do something special with Buckles and Bugs. So we had, or Charlie had auctioned off a couple of these guitars and one of the belt buckles as well to the crowd there. And in doing so, we raised $6,000 for the inclusive playground for the park. 100% of the proceeds went to that, and that was the main goal for this festival, was so that we could give something back to Stephenville. We appreciate the support of the council, each one of you, and we look forward to doing it again next year.
Yes.
Good.
So,
No, go and take some pictures.
yes. If you want to come up and.
Alan Nick said he'd play us something here in a minute.
Alan, there you go.
If he'll lie to you about that, he'll lie to you about other things
It might be better to.
too. Kelly's holding it, that means she's playing it.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate y'all. Thank y'all.
Yeah, we'll see y'all.
Yeah, take that guitar on. One of us gonna drop it up here in a minute. Between Brady and me.
Did we move it?
Okay, next agenda item is to consider incident related to the issuance of bonds. Mr. Barnes?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we have Eric Maha. Wait, I don't think, yes, we have Eric Maha with our financial advisor to discuss our bonds with you. Our certificates of obligation and our refunding bonds, I'm sorry.
Thanks, sir.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. As mentioned, Eric Maha with Hilltop Securities, and the information here before you is hot off the press. Tonight, you have two agenda items related to certificates of obligation, and the following agenda item is related to refunding bonds. We have information on both of those here this evening. I believe the first agenda item is the certificates, so we can address that first.
Yes, sir.
We can answer any questions along the way. And so on the cover page, wanted to point out, and bids are actually taken this morning. Typically when we sell debt instruments in the market, we want to align it with the council meeting date. So we took bids this morning. All the numbers have been drafted into the ordinances here this evening, and this is a summary of those numbers from this morning. On the cover page, you'll notice the city issued, or is proposing to issue $20,740,000 in certificates of obligation, and then $2.825 million in refunding bonds to refinance for savings, some older bonds that the city had. Prior to the issuance, on the bottom of the cover page, part of the process, we have to go to the bond rating agencies, and the city's bond rating was affirmed at the AA- level, which is the same rating that the city has had for a number of years. So no change there. So that was assigned to the certificates and the bonds prior to the sale today. Next page, we have just some of the information prior to sale. I know city staff worked very hard to compile a document that potential investors use to make their decisions on investing in these debt obligations. And so we have a copy of those items, the first few pages. Page 5, I'll get into some of the summary information. On page 5 this morning at 10 o'clock, we took bids on the certificates, and you'll see in total 4 firms bid. These are 4 different investment banks. The winning bidder is the Baker Group. It came in at 3.13% interest rate. So very good interest rate, and I'm sure you're all aware what interest rates have been doing so far this year. We have a lot going on. So being able to lock this in, this is a fixed rate. It will not change for the life of the certificates. Something we always look for is the relationship between the first and second bid, and you can see those bids were very close together. So that shows us that's a good market rate on this. And in total, having 4 bids, that's good participation. So page 6, this is what we call the sources and uses, and the certificates. Keep in mind, this process started into last year, developing the project in size, and the city went through the notice process a couple months ago. So tonight is the item. This will produce $20 million towards utility improvements and then $2 million towards park improvements. We were able to combine them into one certificate, but we were able to track the payments separately. So in total, the city will receive $22 million on April 28th. And you'll notice that the amount that the city will actually pay back, the certificate sold at a premium this morning. The city will pay back the $20 million, but those premium dollars will be used to fully fund that $22 million. So the city will receive the full amount on the closing date. Page 7 is a snapshot of the annual payments. This is a 20-year structure. I know in the past we've looked at multiple structures. This is the 20-year structure, a little over $1.5 million in annual payments starting next year. So come budget time, end of this year, the city would make arrangements for payments starting next year. And then, as I mentioned, that rate came in at 3.13. Page 8, just some of the nuts and bolts. The rates ranged from 1.65% up to 3%, but on average, we came in at that 3.13. The city would have the option, starting in 2032, to refinance, depending on rates at the time, or pay off the certificates early. So for the next 10 years, you would not have the opportunity, but 10 years from now, if there's funds available, the city can start paying those certificates off early if you choose to. And that was a brief summary on the certificates. I can pause and wait for the next agenda item if you'd like, or answer any more questions on the certificates.
Well, let's go ahead and have the questions. Does anybody have any questions for item 1? It's just brand new to everybody, so take a moment. We've been working on it for quite a while.
I would like to point out page 14, it ties to certificates. We have a graph. I thought it would be helpful just to see, historically speaking, knowing that interest rates have risen over the last couple months. I think historically, going back to 2002, the last 20 years, you can see in the blue line that it's still a very good time to borrow money on a historical basis. So I thought this chart was useful. We have the same information behind it on page 15. Again, just not all-time lows. I think we've been spoiled the last few years in terms of interest rates, but still very low historically. So.
Justin, you have any questions? Hold on, start over. She just turned the volume up.
Does the rate change have any impact on our calculations of debt service?
The debt service on page, let's go back to that. Page 7 will be $1.5 million a year. Back in September of last year, I know when we first started doing projections on this, we were estimating $1.47 million a year, so about $30,000 more a year, and that's purely attributable to the last few months, mainly the last 2 or 3 weeks in the municipal bond market. I think with inflation and talk of war and the Fed making their movements, so I think the thought is rates are going up. We've certainly seen that, but a little higher than projections back last September.
Anybody else? Hearing none, we have a motion. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt an ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of the City of Stephenville, Texas combination tax revenue certificates of obligation, Series 2022, and approving all matters incident thereto.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, sir. Next item.
Yes, sir. Next item would be the refunding bonds. We took advantage, I know, talking with city staff, since the city was in the process of doing the certificates, you all have some 2013 bonds that were eligible to be refunded or refinanced. So we're able to save on some of the administrative work and costs by combining them on the same day. And so that's purely the reason here this evening. It's just an opportunity to lower the interest rate on some of the city's existing debt. On page 9, I'll quickly summarize. On page 9, the refunding bonds received 3 bids. Stone X Financial came in at the low bid of 2.62%. And then, like I said, there's 2 other bids on top of that. So 3 bids, good, and then a rate that's lower than the current rate. So that was the ultimate goal, so we achieved that. The next page, it doesn't have a page number, but it would be page 10, is a snapshot of the actual savings that the city will achieve, starting at about $20,000 in savings this year, and then in the future years about 16, 17, 18, 19,000 a year thereafter. In total, over 200,000 in savings. That was good to see. And as I mentioned, the current rate on those bonds that were issued back in 2013 is a 376. With today's rate, that will be lower down to 262. There is no extension of the payment, so the city will still have the same payment term, just at a lower rate. And then the savings percentage down on the bottom in red, we always like to calculate that. This figure at 5.9% in savings is a good figure. And that was partly one of the reasons we thought it would be good to include it at this time.
Questions? Comments?
Is there a reason for the difference in the interest rates on the COs versus the refunding of the bonds?
Yes, sir. The main reason is the repayment term. The COs go out 20 years on the bonds, it's a 10-year repayment. So since it's a shorter amortization, it's a lower interest payment.
Okay.
Yes.
Anybody else? Justin?
No, sir.
Hearing no questions or comments, do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move to adopt an ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of the City of Stephenville, Texas general obligation refunding bond series 2022 and approving all other matters incident thereto.
Second.
Motion is second. Further discussion? Proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Same sign opposed. Motion passes. At this point, we have some paperwork to sign, so you can get back and file these. So we're going to recess for a few minutes. Is that okay?
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. I can save you the postage, yeah.
Well, there you go. Well, we're going to go ahead and do that here in just a minute. So we're going to recess for about 5 or 10 minutes. We'll be back. She's out there signing papers. All right, at 6:10, we'll call ourselves back to order. And since we just signed $22 million in loans, I'm going to let Mr. Barnes explain what the council and staff have been dealing with for about a year now.
Sorry. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, to refresh everybody's memory, what we borrowed the money for tonight, $2 million is for park improvements. At this point, it appears that it's our plan to build a couple of baseball fields at City Park, one or more, depending on the prices. We are also planning to completely redo Long Street, replace the utilities, sidewalks, street surface. We are also going to build a well field. About, I don't know, several years ago, the city purchased 536 acres with the intent of putting a well field on it. That well field will have, when it's completely built out, we'll have 5 wells. There will be a transmission line that will bring it back to the airport pump station, which is currently being constructed. And there are a couple of other projects, should we have any funds left over. We've borrowed the money that we believe the projects will take, but there will be a couple of others in the event that there are leftover funds. We get good bids, whatever. I will say that the well field, Mr. Painter, will supply water for the city of Stephenville for probably the next 75 to 100 years. And it's being designed so tactically that as those wells, should those wells start to play out, all they're going to have to do in the future is shift those wells a small degree and be able to re-drill it.
Good.
So we're very proud to be able to do those jobs for the citizens.
Any questions for Alan?
Well, I think it'd just be important to note too, the $2 million for the parks improvements is being funded by the sports venue tax that was passed by voters
Hotel motel tax.
2 years ago.
Yes, sir. It's the hotel motel tax, being the sports venue tax, and the improvements that I discussed will be paid for by ratepayers of our water and sewer system. We will not be increasing taxes to pay for this.
Wonderful.
Anybody else? Thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Planning and Zoning Commission, we're going to move some items around. We're going to take,
We've got one more item, number 8.
oh, that's right, we do. I apologize for that. Number 8, authorize disposition, of police department firearms and purchase and replacement firearms. Chief, he's already up here. I just assumed he was already going to take care of that.
Yes, sir. We'll make it real quick. So, Mr. Mayor, distinguished members of the council, we're requesting, as per Texas Government Code, your authorization to sell approximately 39 department-issued pistols and rifles that have reached the end of their life cycle to GT Distributors, which is the highest bidder law enforcement supply company that's done this, for over 30 years that I've been in the law enforcement profession, and replace those with current serviceable weapons at the department. In addition to that, authorize the sale of 14 of department-issued pistols to those officers, either current active duty, retired, or reserve, and actually Sergeant Watts' pistol, one deceased officer's family, to authorize the sale of those to there, which is also, again, authorized by the Texas Government Code based on approval from the governing body. And so we have, again, done all of our research, and we have actually will end up being able to purchase replacement ones and have about a $2,600 extra surplus in there, where we can use that money to buy equipment for the rifles, such as scopes, slings, those accessories in there also.
Questions for the chief? You hear a motion?
We authorize the disposition of firearms and the purchase of replacements as presented.
Have a
Second.
motion, second by who?
Second.
Is that you, Alan?
I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Same sign opposed, motion passes. Thank you, Chief. Appreciate you. Sorry, I'll overlook you one more time. Steve, We're going to move items 15, 17, 19, and 21 because we have someone from Charlton here that may have a question. We may have questions for, so
Yes,
why
sir.
don't we jump to those first?
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, Council, we have
Second.
4 street closure cases tonight for consideration
We haven't
before
had
we
that
go to the
conversation.
rezones. These 4 cases were
On here?
initiated before City Council on February 1st,
Oh, I got you.
2022. The first case is AS 2022-002. It is for the abandonment of Sloan Street from Harbin to St. Felix. After the action initiated by City Council on February 1st, the Planning and Zoning Commission convened on March 16th, 2022, and held a public hearing. After receiving input from 2 persons during the public hearing, the commission voted 5-2, recommending the City Council proceed with the initiated action and abandon the street. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Steve?
Steve, I'm not sure this is for you or for Mr. Barnes, but normally the procedure when we abandon a right-of-way like this, the adjacent property owners have the opportunity to purchase that portion that is abutting their property. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that would be correct according to Chapter 95. Once the street is abandoned, each property owner adjacent to that section of the public property that's being abandoned has a right to purchase their adjacent proportional property.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And that is a separate action. The action tonight does not close the street, nor does it transfer ownership. It starts the process for that.
That is correct, yes, sir.
Okay.
And so, Steve just clarified from that, so everybody understands. So we'll come back and consider a final action on this, and that's when the actual fair market value and the monies, of course, we discussed as far as what's going to be owed for these streets.
Yes, sir. Tonight's action would basically just give staff the ability to work through those assessments in the future and then offer the sale of the property as, I'm getting mixed signals here.
There's not another council action after this. The ordinance spells out how that's supposed to be done.
So I guess then it talks about the timeline that regarding the fair market value appraisals will be done at the time of the final action by the council. So if this is the final action of the council, when do those appraisals come into play then?
No, so there's another part of the ordinance that talks about calculation on the adjacent land values. And that's typically the process that's used when we do these.
That's what I'm just getting, am I reading it wrong then when it talks about as far as under that section regarding the timelines on, it says final council action, or unless the city administrator agrees to extend that. Let's see, within 90 days, where we at?
I believe it's 95.56, page 2.
Yeah, within 90 days of the council's public hearing, but before the city council's final action, petitioner will provide appraisals by a certified appraiser of real property. Cost appraisals will be paid by the petitioners upon written application by the city petitioner. Time period may be extended by the city administrator.
In this case, there was no petitioner. This
So
was
we-
action initiated by council.
Okay.
So I don't believe those 2 paragraphs apply. So
Okay.
in this case, without the petitioner, it was city-initiated action. And with this approval, then staff would be able to move forward with those appraisals and then proceed with the sale at a later time. But not necessarily, there would not be additional action before council.
So then we scroll down, I guess, to section C there. If the requested closure is approved by the city council, the actual selling price shall be determined solely by the city council. Is that what we're talking about here in this case?
I believe so, yes, sir.
And so how do we determine what that selling price is? I mean, I know it says no less than appraised value. We're just going to strictly use what's on the CAD and then do a pro rata on the portion from the property, or how do we determine that?
Yes, sir. That's the process we typically use.
And then it's guess to follow up with Alan's questions as far as if there's only about 15 or so property owners that are not Tarleton, it looks like, on all these properties we're going to talk about. So how do those adjoining or budding property owners, how do they get notified of their opportunity if they want to purchase? I don't know if there's any desire to do that. I'm just curious.
I think we can speak more to this. This, what we're anticipating is a very staggered process that would not occur in most cases until the university had acquired all the property, and then we would have those negotiations.
Okay.
We would not plan on closing or selling the actual street until that was the case. As long as we have private businesses or residences, then we're basically asking you to kind of stage
set the stage
Okay.
so that as that transitions, we have those pieces in place.
Okay. And I guess last thing, Randy, technically, I mean, I know our ordinances require one thing, but I think the transportation code for a home rule city, we don't even, I mean, as far as opportunity to sell to abutting or adjoining properties, that's not required of the transportation code, is it necessarily? I know as far as like to bring a petition in a general law city, the
I think
adjoining.
you're right, but we operate under the most restrictive.
Correct.
And I think our ordinance is more restrictive than the transportation code.
I think that's right. I just want to make sure that
I hadn't looked at it in 40 days.
No, I think you're 100% right, so I want to make sure that that was just out there. Okay. I'm good for now.
Anybody else?
Did I hear the explanation correct that this would protect the existing property owners that are not Tarleton? Jason?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
That's correct.
So if we initiate abandonment, there's still protections for the property owners.
Yes, sir. City services still be provided.
On the surface, that just doesn't make sense, so I just want to make sure we get it clear. If we abandon the street tonight,
Mr. Thurman, we are abandoning the street. We are not selling the street. We retain ownership until such time as the sale to Tarleton is consummated.
so if we abandon it, then are we saying if there's an issue, we're not taking care of it because we've already abandoned it?
No, sir, that is not correct.
Okay.
Steve, how many adjacent property owners are there on Sloan Street?
Oh, gosh, that's a great question. I didn't do that. I don't have that information.
That aren't Tarleton, Gerald? It looks like 1, 2, 4,
One
5.
corner of St. Felix, I believe, is one.
Oh, thanks, Lord.
Yeah, there's just
Lori,
one.
you want to come up here and
Anything
kind of
contract
answer some of those
right now.
questions so we can get on the record? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Don't sit down too far, Steve.
On this particular street, Sloan from Harbin to St. Felix, there's one property owner that isn't the university, and we have a executed contract to purchase that piece of property.
Anybody else? Any other questions? I'll consider an approval of an ordinance. Do I have a motion? Oh, we have to have a public hearing. That's right, I'm sorry, I apologize. Can we enter a public hearing on the item? It's AS 2022-002, abandonment of Sloan Street from Harbin Drive to St. Felix Street. Do I hear anybody want to come and speak in favor? Speak in opposition? Hearing none, I close the public hearing and consider approval of an ordinance.
Mr. Mayor, I make the motion to abandon Sloan Street from Harbin to St. Felix.
Second.
Have a second? Further discussion? Proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Same sign opposed. Motion passes. Next item.
Yes, sir. Case number AS 2022-004 is the abandonment of Turner Street from Harbin to St. Felix. We had one person speak in opposition during the public hearing on March 16th, 2022. The commission voted 4-3, recommending the city council terminate the initiated action for street abandonment. So in this case, they did not recommend that we move forward with the street abandonment.
Okay, and the vote was what?
4-3.
4-3.
But the action, the motion was worded to terminate the initiated action to abandon the street, so not proceed.
Okay.
So we're proceeding.
They recommended that we not proceed with the abandonment.
What was the reason?
We had several points come up during the process. One was the concern about, a resident came forward and spoke about access to the property if we were to abandon the street. There was concern about if the city would continue to offer water and sewer services. And a commissioner did ask that I relay the message that they just thought that it was a little early in the process to abandon the street when the properties had not been acquired yet by Tarleton. And those were the reasons that were discussed during the P&Z meeting.
Okay. Or do you want to address those properties?
So Turner Street, I believe there is one abandoned property at the end of, at Turner and St. Felix. Then there is one, commercial property that has access on Harbin. Did I miss it, Jason?
No, ma'am.
Oh, okay. That has, access on Harbin, but then also has an access on Turner Street, which would not be impacted.
We're talking about Turner? We're on 4.
Yeah.
We're on.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're maintaining
Turn it.
access to that.
We're maintaining access.
Three sides, so.
Right. And since I believe the planning and zoning meeting, Mr. Kincannon has reached out to the university to negotiate a potential purchase.
Any questions for Lawyer Steve? Jason, you sound like you have something in your mind. Okay. Let's see, so what we did is enter a public hearing on the abandonment of Turner Street from Harbin Drive to St. Felix Street. Item AS 20020220004.
Yes,
Madam-
that, I realize now, thanks to my bosses, I skipped.
Well, that's what,
case
I
study,
don't,
so
we'll come back
my
to it.
apologies.
That's our problem. Anybody want to come and speak in favor or in opposition to the proposal? The request?
I'm on the Zoom meeting. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I attended the P&Z meeting.
Would you state your name and address, please?
Sure. My name's Kyle Moore. I'm with Bear Capital. My address is 1703 Merriford Lane, San Antonio 78209. So we have a property that's going to come up on these further street closures on St. Felix and West Washington. But at the P&Z meeting, the biggest feedback from other property owners regarding Carlton, Turner, and St. Felix was that unlike Sloan, where Tarleton has acquired all the property, there were still property owners that by closing the street or abandoning the street, they lose access to their property. On Turner Street, there's still property owned by individuals. But by abandoning the street, they lose access to it. My feedback is generally just putting the cart before the horse. If Tarleton acquires those properties, then it makes perfect sense to close them in future use. But more importantly, if you close it before Tarleton's acquired those properties, you could devalue the property. It could be used as a way for Tarleton to acquire those properties at below market values. So that's a consideration for those property owners. Again, we only have a property that borders St. Felix. So whether you do Tarleton or Turner, I don't really care. But the same concern is that there's property owners that need access to their properties on these streets still as Tarleton attempts to acquire them.
Okay. You want to address that?
Yes, sir. Again, we actually won't close streets until such time as the university does own 100%. And then we would go through this process. Again, we're just asking you to set the stage for as that transition occurs.
I guess, how would that look though, Jason? I mean, so if we're not actually going to close anything, what assurances do we provide to those property owners that it's not going to get closed if we initiate abandoning these streets tonight?
Because again, as Mr. Barnes said, we still own them, we can still maintain them, we have to allow access for our residents and businesses to get to their property.
So make sure I understand the process once again. So even though we move to abandon tonight until we negotiate the actual sale, which is ultimately the end goal here. I mean, we can always abandon the streets and never really sell them, I guess. I mean, so until we negotiate the sale of those property, of the street itself to Tarleton, assuming, I mean, that's when we're kind of using as our date to, at that point, be out of this thing?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Anybody else?
What if we abandon them and that never happens though? How do we ever reassert our claim to those things, Randy? I don't know.
We own the property. We own the property, but dedicate them, we'd have to dedicate them to the
again,
street.
yeah.
Again.
So to make sure I understand this, who, after we abandon these, what are we, like the gentleman on the Zoom call said, how are we going to know what we're paying for this as a council if it's not coming back to council?
In the ordinance, it's the method that we most commonly use is using the associated CAD values, land values next to the street.
Okay.
And so we use those values to create the average that then is the price that that resort, unless you, as a body, want to come up with something totally different. That's normally how we just, that's what we did on Bentley.
I think as the ordinance reads, though, the council will still have to approve that. For that sale, we'll have to approve that that's what we will accept. It's not something that the staff just can automatically accept.
No, I think,
We usually do that unless the
Yeah.
council states a desire when we do this for that to happen that way.
The ordinance will abandon and authorize the sale of such property.
I think to what Brady's point was earlier is that's not what the ordinance says. The ordinance says that the council will have the final say of the sales price.
That's the way you want, sir, well, absolutely do it that way.
I don't know if that really has any bearing on the abandonment, but that's.
It does not.
Well, that's what
Next
I
thing
was
I agree, and I
saying.
think I just want to clarify the abandonment process and then us actually selling the streets is really, I think by ordinance also two separate processes. So I get that, I want to make sure we're on the same page for that. So as long as, I would like that, of course, to come back and just talk about the actual price of these things, because I think that's why I want to talk about the process if we decide to, hey, we don't really want to abandon these things anymore. And we're talking about, I know we're just abandoning the streets, to make that clear, we still own the property, as Randy said, we're not giving the property away, it's still our property technically, it's just not a platted street anymore if we abandon it, obviously. So I would like to have further conversations about, the actual sale, transfer of those at some point when it comes up to it, so.
Yeah.
I'm good with it.
So you'll bring it back to council then when that happens? Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else? Anybody else? Okay, well, so we just did we had a public hearing, so I hear consider approval of an ordinance.
And Mayor, you're gonna have to tell me, which one are we on?
Well, I'm
Maybe
sorry.
we mentioned.
It's
I know,
004.
that's what I was about
Okay, we're on
to.
4?
We're on
Okay.
4.
Turn.
So make
Mayor, I
the,
move-
go ahead, Justin, go ahead.
I'm 1,000 miles away.
It's fine, you go ahead.
Justin, I got you making a motion.
All right, AS 2022004, the abandonment of Turner Street from Harbor Drive to St. Felix Street.
Second.
Have a motion and a second, further discussion. On this particular vote, Darren, having worked, being an employee of Tarleton, is going to abstain from voting on these. Just made that, and I'll let sign the form here in a minute. Any other discussion? Proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, sign. Motion passes. We're going to go back up down at 003.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
AS 2022-003 is for the abandonment of Tarleton Street from Harbin to St. Felix. Again, initiated on February 1st. Planning and Zone Commission convened on March 16th. By a vote of 3 to 4, recommended the City Council proceed with the street abandonment, but the vote did not pass. The motion failed, so the moves forward with the denial.
Okay. Questions for Steve?
And if I remember right, the reasoning on this one was because the house at the corner of Tarleton and St. Felix has side access. Is that?
That was mentioned during the discussion, yes, sir.
But that is not their only access, correct?
No, sir.
Want to address that, Lori?
Yes, that is correct, and we are currently negotiating with that owner, but we do not have a signed contract.
I think there's a garage in the, I'd call it the backyard of that building that's accessed from Tarleton. St. Felix is the front of the property, and the address would probably be St. Felix, but that driveway cuts off of there and goes through the backyard to that. It's a detached garage, or that's what it appears to be.
Yes, sir, that is correct. The address is St. Felix.
Anybody else?
Is somebody living in that property?
It has been rental property.
Oh, okay. That's what
If you've seen it lately.
I drove by it
It
yesterday.
would be something that a lot of cities would consider for abandonment.
Right.
To buy it.
Yeah, it didn't look.
Other comments, questions? Hearing none, we'll enter in a public hearing on case number AS 2022-003, abandonment of Tarleton Street from Harbin Drive to St. Felix. Does anybody want to come speak in favor or in opposition to the request? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. I'll consider a motion of approval of an ordinance abandoning Tarleton Street from Harbin Drive to St. Felix Street.
Mayor, I have a question I
Yes,
should
sir.
have asked earlier.
Okay.
Do we have active utilities at that address?
I don't know if they're active or not.
Okay.
I don't believe they are. No, sir.
Okay. They're in place, but they're not active.
That's correct.
So
Okay.
Anybody else? Okay, consider approval of an ordinance abandoning Charlton Street from Harbin Drive to St. Felix. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chair, I recommend, I move that we approve the abandonment of Charlton Street from Harbor Drive to St. Felix, case number AS 2022-003.
Do I hear a second?
A second.
Leanne? Oh, I got
Yeah, it was
Leanne.
Leanne.
Is that?
Trying to get
is
me,
that
Justin, every
12,000
time.
1,200 mile distance. Any further discussion? Proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Last item, number 21.
AS 2022-005 is for the abandonment of St. Felix Street from Washington Street to Sloan Street. We had two persons speak in opposition during the public hearing on March 16th, 2022. The Planning and Zoning Commission recommended 4-3 that the City Council terminate the initiated action to abandon the street. So in essence, recommended that we not proceed with the abandonment.
Okay, just got questions?
There's a lot of this. Will the lot go away if this is abandoned on the Washington?
That was my question.
That would be a decision of the Texas Department of Transportation. There may be some thought on Tarleton's part, since their students cross there so frequently, that light may need to remain in place.
You want to address that?
Just a thought I had.
We
Any
would
question?
certainly ask for that to stay. The corner of St. Louis and Washington is the proposed site for our new parking garage, and we would certainly want that light to stay to aid in traffic in that area. I will speak to St. Felix. There are 4 properties not owned by the university. I believe one is under contract by Mr. Moore's company, but currently owned by the Backus family. One is under contract for sale to Tarleton, and then 2 are in negotiations.
Questions for lawyer Steve?
Steve, there will still be a right-of-way down St. Felix for the underground drainage project that is being constructed
Yes, sir,
right
and if
now,
I
correct?
recall correctly, as properties develop on that St. Felix, I believe there's an additional right-of-way on St. Felix that would have to be looked at for future development.
I will also mention there's a utility easement that on Tarleton property at St. Felix and Sloan Street that is up for renewal of that easement. And we're gonna go ahead, our intention is to go ahead and renew that easement as it is, with the understanding that should our development impact that, we will address the utilities coming through there at Tarleton's cost.
Other questions?
The business that's at the corner of Washington and St. Felix, I'd call it the northwest corner. I think they maintain a drive at the rear of that building so they can come and go and use the traffic signal, which if they're there in the evenings or mornings, either one, that's an area that's hard to get access on Washington Street unless you use that light. If we abandon that property, and I understand we're not closing it, but if there's anything done that's going to inhibit the use of that, I would struggle with that because of the private property ownership and the ability to come and go, and traffic on Washington, I fear, will do nothing but worsen.
I can tell you in Tarleton's current development plans, that portion of St. Felix would never be closed.
Okay, from Washington.
From Turner Street to Washington, there's no plan in our 2030 plan to close that portion of the street.
Is that because of the parking lot?
Yes,
Parking garage would be accessed off St.
that's
Felix,
correct.
not Washington.
That's correct.
Okay.
Anybody else?
And there are still two houses that are occupied currently, and one that is vacant.
There are two houses that have been rental properties. One is owned by a local business owner, and we are in negotiations with him. At this point, we do not have a signed contract. The other is owned by an individual that is not in the Stephenville community. I believe they live in Fort Worth. It is a rental property. I do not know if they have tenants right now. It's been on and off.
Other questions? We'll enter into a public hearing on case number AS 2022-005, abandonment of St. Felix Street from West Washington to Sloan Street. Does anybody want to speak in favor or in opposition to the request?
I do.
Yes, ma'am. State your name and address.
My name is Cecily Backus. I live at 4915 County Road 258 in Dublin, Texas. We own the property at 1901 West Washington, which is the business. And so we use that drive-through. Our customers use it, and we use the exit out for safety, like Mr. Nix was saying. It's almost impossible to get out onto Washington. Secondarily to that, we are under contract with Mr. Moore's company, who's on the Zoom. And, if the abandonment of the street, even though y'all aren't going to close it, and I understand all the things that we've been saying, is going to affect the contract there. And I feel like we're being squeezed to sell to Tarleton. And there's lots of other properties on Washington that are other businesses that aren't having to sell to Tarleton. And if Tarleton wants our property, they can negotiate with us if the other contract was to fall through. But I don't feel like I should have to be squeezed to sell to them because y'all are closing that street. It kind of hurts the use of our property. Makes it where I don't have ingress and egress off of the drive-through.
Anybody have questions? Anything else?
Also, the property behind us, there are tenants currently in that property, which is the property that she was speaking about.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Does anybody have anything? No.
Anybody have any questions? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to speak in favor or in opposition?
I'm on the Zoom.
Yes, sir.
So I'm buying the property from Ms. Backus for commercial redevelopment. So our biggest concern is if the street's abandoned, obviously that ingress egress is important to us, that the way that light functions and traffic on West Washington. We have to be able to use our access point on St. Felix, which it sounds like Tarleton's 2030 plan would not close it essentially south of Turner. But my question would be, would the city create something over Tarleton for a turnaround if you dead end into Turner to turn around? If you turned right off West Washington, that would be a concern. But our biggest concern is financial. By there being on record the abandonment of St. Felix, if we start showing this to, like, we have a pending contract with a user for this property, and our financial loss would be quite significant. It could potentially open the city of Stephenville to litigation on the losses from the commercial development of that site that we'd be losing out if that user was to say, well, now that it's on record that street will be abandoned, and we have real concerns about tenanting that building without having ingress, egress, or any guarantee that street will be maintained by the city, the light will be there long term, that there'll be access through St. Felix to change the traffic flow, traffic counts on that street. So for retailers, they're looking at these traffic counts when considering leasing and buying the property. So those are our big concerns. I think I also think that it's just fair in Texas property rights if Tarleton wants to acquire these properties to buy them on for market value on the open market, or there's other avenues such as eminent domain. And instead, we feel like that Tarleton is using the function of the city council to go around those ways to acquire these properties by devaluing our property in order that they can purchase it at a lower price. We've had unsuccessful negotiations with Tarleton to purchase the property. We're still open to negotiating with Tarleton. But if the city closes and abandons St. Felix, it certainly impacts the value of this property. And we feel like Tarleton's using the city council as a way, instead of negotiating on the open market or using eminent domain to acquire the property. So those are our concerns. I'm happy to listen to any feedback there on how this street will be maintained or what the plan for it is, but we see the abandonment of St. Felix as a drastic devaluing of 1901 West Washington.
Thank you, sir. Anybody have any comments, questions for him?
I got a
They
question.
would have, they would have the ability to buy their half of that road.
Exactly, yeah.
Correct? At CAD value. Correct?
Yeah, they're after the center point, halfway.
They would be able to buy center to the center point for CAD value. That is-
And the city of Stevens doesn't own the traffic light, correct?
TxDOT owns that.
That's TxDOT.
So we have no control over whether there's a traffic light or not.
It's my understanding. Is that correct, Jason? Alan?
That's correct.
And we have no control over arbitrage.
Over, I didn't understand the last.
I didn't hear you.
Is it arbitrage?
Arbitrage.
I don't know. I don't know how that, don't understand.
He did, Alan's asking what you mean by that, yeah, Justin.
Purchasing the property, assuming near or at a sales price
Oh,
or transaction.
that's correct. I apologize. We use arbitrage in a different way, so that's the reason for confusion.
Anybody else? Any questions? Yes, sir.
I have a question. So we would have the right to buy our half of St. Felix that abuts the property at 1901 West Washington. But the action to abandon St. Felix Street, again, I'll reiterate that it's devaluing the property to end users, to potential tenants of the building and redevelopment, national credit retailers. It's changing traffic flows, but it's also forcing us to buy a street if we want to use it. And I would have concerns of who's maintaining that. So once we bought it at whatever the CAD value is, at that point, we would be required to maintain it. But currently, the city maintains that street. It's used for traffic flow in and out of that property. So essentially, by abandoning it, my question is, would that force us to buy that portion in order to use St. Felix for our traffic flow? And if that's the case, again, I think that the law is pretty clear that abandoning that street, so long as we own the property, I don't think there's a way the city council of Stephenville can abandon that street without opening themselves up to litigation.
Anybody else?
I just want to clarify that Tarleton didn't bring this action. It was brought by city staff. I'm just simply here to answer questions. So the accusation that Tarleton is using the city council is simply not the case.
Anybody else? Close the public hearing then, and item 22 is consider approval of an ordinance abandoning St. Felix Street from West Washington Street to Sloan Street. And the question is, it's abandoned, yes, sir.
Mayor, I may suggest for course of action for us, we maybe could put this one down for a little bit. It would certainly be a length of time down the road before we were ready to even enter into those kind of discussions. So
What's the council's pleasure?
As the property owners are there, I wouldn't have a problem with abandoning between Sloan and Tarleton, because they own both sides
Right.
of that property.
I will say that Tarleton will at some point bring to you a proposal to abandon in order to construct a 7,000 seat arena and convocation center at Sloan and St. Felix, and the property from the street from Sloan to between, it falls, on the plans right now, it falls just between Tarleton and Turner. They are drafts, or I would be glad to share them with you, but they're not final. But we will come to you at some point and ask that this street issue not hold that project up.
So are you suggesting we amend the request or the ordinance?
Well, I guess I could just make a motion that we have the ordinance to abandon St. Felix Street between Sloan and Tarleton.
Can we do that, Randy? Is that what's the public notice?
You're just, it's on the agenda correctly, so yes.
So we just amend that ordinance request.
Yes, that'd be the motion.
Okay.
So you need a motion to amend the ordinance to request to include abandonment of St. Felix Street between Sloan and Tarleton.
Will that work, Randy?
Yes.
Okay. So is that your motion?
That's my motion.
Second.
A motion is second.
Sloan to Tarleton.
From Sloan to Tarleton. St. Felix from Sloan to Tarleton. Any further discussion?
That will leave the balance of St. Felix from Tarleton to Washington open, correct?
Correct.
Until,
We'll leave all
Until
of
some point in
the,
the
guarantee all of the access to those 4 property owners that have not yet sold.
So all of those properties that are still privately owned will maintain access down St. Felix to their properties. Okay.
okay, that's the motion is second. Any further discussion? Proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Justin, you still there?
Yes.
Okay. Motion passes. Thank you very much. Next item. Steve, we'll jump back up to item 9.
Yes, sir. Case number RZ 2022-001. Applicant Delana A. Denman is requesting a rezone of property located at 2220 West Washington Street, parcel 30368 of City Addition, from B1 Neighborhood Business to B2 Retail and Commercial. The Planning and Zoning Commission convened on March 16, 2022, and by unanimous vote, voted 7-0 to recommend the City Council approve the rezoning request. And just as a point of reference for these two properties, these are properties on Dell Street across from the Pizza Hut. And so they cut from Washington on both sides through Dell Street. And just wanted to make that point of reference for you. With that, Mayor, I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions for Steve? Hearing none, we'll enter the public hearing on case number RZ 2022-001, requesting rezone of property located at 2220 West Washington Street. Want to come and speak in favor or in opposition to the request? Hearing none, we'll close. I'm sorry?
I'd like to speak in favor. Yeah, I have something more positive for the meeting.
Okay, what? State your name again and your address. We've got 3 minutes.
My name is Kyle Moore with Bear Capitals, 7979 Broadway, San Antonio, Texas. We're buying this property from Delana and the property that's directly behind it for retail development. Most national credit retailers that are not currently in the market and have engineered site plans for both retail, medical use. It's very likely to be retail strip center. The future use plan of these 2 parcels show it as B2, so we're just requesting that it go from B1 to B2 so that it opens us up to those more retail uses. We've been talking to the city about development of setbacks and site planning and all of that. That's all I got. If you have questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing and consider approval on an ordinance rezoning property located at 2220 West Washington Street. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Darren made a motion and Brandon seconded. Any further discussion?
Steve, I should have asked you earlier, and I apologize, that the rezone, will it be in compliance with the future land used in that area for that parcel?
Yes, sir. The future land use actually is commercial, where it's currently B1 neighborhood business, but with the request, they'd be moving to the future land use of B2.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, sir. Next item.
RZ 2022-002, applicant Donald and Mary Sparks are requesting a rezone of the property located at 2223 West South Loop, parcel 30369. This is also a city addition. This is a kind of a sister property to what we just heard. And again, it is for the moving from B1 to B2 to allow for a higher and greater use for the property. Mr. Moore Kyle is still on the line, I believe, to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Steve or for Kyle? Here now, we'll go into public hearing on RZ 2022-002. You want to come speak in favor of the request or in opposition?
I have the same comments. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. Any questions for Kyle? It's Kyle? Chris?
Yes,
Kyle. Okay, hearing none, we'll close the public hearing and consider approval of an ordinance rezoning that property. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Darren makes motion and Gerald seconds it. Proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Same sign opposed, motion passes. Thank you, sir. Next item.
Case number RZ 2022-003, applicant Michael Weeks is requesting a rezone of property located at 1620 West Swan Street and 1680 West Swan Street, parcel 33562 of Southside Addition. They are asking that this be rezoned from industrial to R3. The property is currently multifamily use, but it's in an industrial zone. And they're asking for this rezone to allow for the construction of 6 additional units, which would be adjacent to the railroad track, but not within, they have room to do this without protruding into the setback requirements. So it is for 6 additional units at Chaparral Apartments. And with that, be glad to answer any questions.
Questions for Steve? Hearing none, we'll enter a public hearing on case RZ 2022-003, requesting rezone of the properties located at 1620 and 1680 West Swan Street. You want to come speak in favor or in opposition to the request? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing and consider an approval of a rezone of the properties.
Mayor, I move we approve the rezone as presented.
Second.
A motion, a second. Further discussion? Proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Same sign opposed, motion passes. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
You worn out yet? Thank you very much. We're going to pull the Parks and Leisure Service Committee report from tonight and go on to the next item, Nominations Committee. Mr. Cook.
Thank you, Mayor. The nominating committee would like to propose to the council 2 new members for the Main Street Board. The first would be Terry Colley, would be place 2. And the second one would be Amy Schuse. And that would be for place 3 on the Main Street Board. Both of them seem to be qualified. The nominating committee would like to put forward these 2 names to the council for the Main Street Board.
Anybody have any questions?
They both fill unexpired terms, by the way.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Gerald?
Make that in the form of a motion, sir.
So Gerald making the motion to appoint those 2, and
Second.
Alan second. Proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Start getting loud.
We're voting on the board members. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Same sign opposed. They're now board members. Thank you.
I might also mention that the Main Street Board has reported to the nominations committee with regard to, they're exploring the options, as you all know, with regard to replacing light fixtures around the courthouse and in the downtown area. We have that on the agenda tonight, but we ask that that not be considered. We're waiting for additional pricing to come up, and at the last meeting, we moved to table that request for the new poles and fixtures and all, and the cost of putting those in. We're waiting staff to get the new prices in those that are not in yet. And other things that the Main Street Group is looking at is that they're going through the planning process. They're going to be meeting tomorrow with Scott Polikoff, who is doing the downtown study. And they're doing that as far as the design committee goes. And then as they proceed forward, they'll do long-term and short-term strategic planning with regard to the Main Street Board and the downtown area. And with that, sir, that is my report.
Thanks, sir. Personnel.
Hey, Mary, a question. Well, real quick, Drew, what pricing we're waiting on still on the lighting?
We are waiting on additional costs for the actual putting those in. We have the $69,000 price
Okay.
for the poles. What we don't have, I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Alan, is we don't have the cost for the installation of those, except from one bidder.
We have one bidder. We were also requested to, excuse me, to explore the possibility of moving those lamp posts across the street. Those folks have also been contacted. We have not received a price back from them. I think the company we're waiting on is Jace Mills, I think is who we talked to. However, Mr. Bragg is also involved in that, and he has not supplied us with the additional quote. He did give us I think it was $27,500 quote to replace those lights where they are today, but the council wanted to explore the cost of moving them across the street at some future, either now or at some future date.
Okay. Can we get it brought up next month again so it doesn't just go away and we forget about it?
No, sir. I was talking to the employee who is pursuing those costs,
Okay.
and we agreed that we would do our dead level best to have them by committee of April.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anything else, Gerald?
Did we explore any conversations with the county?
At this point, no, sir, because we really don't have the full cost.
And I
I would think that's a good idea.
Yes, sir.
I think another part of that conversation was verifying with Scott Polikoff that these would fit within his vision. Did that-
We have done that, and they do.
They do. We've had a couple of conversations with Scott Polikoff, and they do.
The location agrees with the plant as well?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
The current locations?
Either or.
Either or, they both work.
Or
Both
both.
work.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Mr. Thurman, Personnel Committee.
Thank you, Mayor. Personnel Committee met on March 15th with a brief update on the proposed pay plan. It wasn't quite ready yet, so we asked to extend that to the next meeting. We met again on March 29th. And in the March 29th Personnel Committee meeting, the first thing we discussed was the insurance renewal premiums. Those were presented and discussed. The motion was made to forward to council that we renew the Blue Cross Blue Shield with the HSA plan only, which was the intent last year that was communicated to staff that moving forward, the HSA would likely be the only plan that was available. And that motion was to renew only the HSA plan and include employer contributions of $38,000 to the HSA accounts. That motion was seconded, or that passed unanimously. It was later heard by another committee, and I think we're going to address that further down our agenda. The next item was the proposed step plan. We discussed the affordability of the plan as it was presented, heard a presentation from Monica about the sustainability of that plan. That motion was made to forward that to council unanimously, but I will say there have been a couple of changes since then, so I want to make sure we understand those. They involve the tourism manager pay and the Main Street manager. There was an issue in the pay study that inflated the tourism pay scale because there were a couple of positions, comparative cities, that those job descriptions did not line up with what our job description is. They had additional roles, so they were considerably higher because of those additional roles that they took. So staff evaluated that and concluded that in looking at our our job descriptions, that tourism and Main Street were very, very similar in the way they operate now, and so those have been equalized to be the same between tourism and Main Street. Another change that was also made with those was that it was changed to reflect that they would be non-exempt positions. So just for clarification on what we're working on or trying to do is that we are not yet adopting a policy on how the pay plan would be administered. I'm sorry, the step plan would be administered. This is only the framework that sets what those steps would look like, but not how you would move through those steps.
So we're not plugging anybody actually into the pay plan today.
The proposal is to plug them into the steps, but the policy and how that's administered right now will remain in place. So there is no automatic movement through that step without council approval as it stands today. And so the policy, correct, and so the policy on how that will move in the future, the goal is to have that ready by budget time.
And so how are we plugging people in today as far as across the board?
So the way it's proposed today is that employees with less than 15 years of service in their position would be plugged into the next closest pay rate, pay step, higher than their current pay.
Okay.
If their current pay is, it may be a $50 difference or it may be a $1,500 difference, but they're going to go to the next closest without going backwards. So long as they don't go backwards.
That's just across the board, that's what we're doing, right?
Employees that have been in the same position 15 years or more will move an additional step.
Okay.
And employees that have been 20 years or more actually get to move 2 steps.
Okay.
In that same position, not time and service with the city. It has to be time and service in that position.
Okay. Across the board, good.
Under the current policy, and this would remain, executive staff salaries are still individually set by council.
Okay. So what do we do? Okay.
So, with that, I'll make a motion to adopt the public safety and non-public safety step plan structures with the adjustments as presented and effective with the April 15th pay date. Make pay adjustments to all executive staff to move pay, make adjustments to all non-executive staff to move pay to the first step closest to current pay without lowering pay. Employees with 15 plus years in the same position to move 1 additional step up, and employees with 20 years in the same position moving 2 additional steps. Executive positions of City Secretary, Development Services Director, and Leisure Services Director to move to next closest step. And Public Works Director, Finance Director, Police Chief, Fire Chief, and Assistant City Manager adjustments as presented in the March 17th executive session. That is my long motion.
Good one.
Second.
Was it you, Alan? Have a motion, a second. Any discussion?
So what were the adjustments presented on March 17th? How specifically, what were those, Ricky?
Those were adjusting Public Works Director, Finance, Police Chief, and Fire Chief to $114,000.
Okay.
And the Assistant City Manager to $124,000.
And how does that fit into our pay plan as far as all the work you've done? I mean, what is that? Is that where they need to be, or is that?
All of those would fall within about between steps 8 and 11. I'm sorry,
Okay.
9 and 11.
I guess my question is I just want to make sure, I mean, we talked about this, but that, of course, when we do that, you know, the work you've done and the research and the data supports that that's where those positions need to go, pay-wise, not just we're picking steps and saying we're going to move you 2 or 3 just because. I mean, that's what we believe they need to be paid to be competitive and what they're warranted.
We're getting really close to talk about individual employees.
Okay. Well,
I can tell you that compared to where these changes would put the other directors in there, they also fall within that step 9 to 11.
Like, as long as we feel like it across the board, it's going to get a kind of butt people where they need to be for us to be competitive in the job market and remain competitive and all those things to our employees, that I'm all about it. I just don't want us to be thinking and choosing positions that we're going to raise.
And moving forward, there will be a policy that dictates how they move from there, so that we don't get into this situation where we have one person here and now we have to move these to be equitable, fair and equitable. Yes, Justin.
How does council controlling the director positions impact the KPIs of the directors versus having a system and a plan in place? Does that make sense long term to keep it that way, or? are we,
I think that's something that council could certainly explore in the future, but our policy right now, that's what it says, so that's how we have to set these salaries right now.
sure,
Mr. Haskey, the way that we have envisioned it is that the city manager and the directors together would work on the director's KPIs. At the time, whether it's in October or April, that the director, that the rest of the employees would take their steps, the city manager would present the recommendation to the council as far as executive staff goes in relation to their KPIs, performance, and without getting into the weeds again, what we're going to do is we're going to establish the KPIs to do with attendance, conduct, and performance. Those are the three criteria that we're going to grade the KPIs on. So that's kind of a thumbnail of how we anticipate, we being I, anticipate doing the KPIs for directors.
Anything else, Justin?
I just wanted to make sure, if we're gonna be evaluating those, I would assume that would be the process, right, Ricky? We get to see those performance reports, and then we get to determine, do they get to move along the step plan or not?
I think that would be a reasonable expectation, for sure.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah,
Yes,
I
sir.
understand. So we have 3 criteria that you've set, right? For how they're going to be put into the step plan, right?
Yes.
That's been set with the step plan. So
Yes.
the less than 15,
As far as how they're,
15 plus, 20 plus.
this is essentially, all this is doing is, this is a mid-year pay adjustment.
But those 5 people fall outside of the plan of those 3 steps, of the 3 criteria.
The council has the ability to set those
Yes.
salaries
So I think
individually.
My heartache with this is that we've set these criteria for all employees of the city except for. And so that's a little disconcerting, the way we did that, is my only hang up with this.
I agree. Especially when we've got one that,
I think the hard part on that is gonna be filling those spots, and if you've got a step plan,
It's,
without talking about individual positions, but you start trying to replace some people and have fun.
It is a very competitive market to replace professional level positions. We've experienced that over the last couple of years.
I fully agree, and there's 2 positions on there. You've moved from exempt to non-exempt. When we looked at it in our committee meeting, they were exempt.
Yes, sir,
Now
that's
I
correct.
understand they're non-exempt.
That's correct.
And so I would offer a amendment to that motion.
I agree.
And that would move the Main Street manager and tourism manager to exempt positions. It's hard
Mr.
enough to hire people in those kind of jobs.
So-
The jobs are fairly demanding, and they're certainly exempt, and they meet the criteria.
Mr. Cook,
Yes,
we discussed this with Betty Lynn, our employment attorney, and she advised that under the Fair Labor Standards Act, those did not qualify, and we're acting on her advice.
Well, with all due respect, she's wrong.
well, then what are we gonna do
This
whenever
one-
we have, oh, I'm sorry.
This, I pulled up texas.gov, and it meets the criteria, as do their job descriptions. And so, and frankly, if you want to check anybody around the country, they're all into exempt positions.
If that's the prerogative of this council, that's fine.
That's why
I've
I offered
advised
the amendment.
the information that I've had.
Thank you.
I just think we know both of those positions are not an 8 to 5 situation. And the first time there's an event or something and they've worked 4 hours straight and we're overtime and we're whatever, I mean, that is a very strong concern of mine, that we're telling them, we need you to do X, Y, and Z, but you got to do it this fast. And you can't you can't have overtime, or you can't have this, or whatever, and then,
That's right.
I think
I've
that's
done my
what the lawyers
obligation.
are saying, is because of that situation, you're opening yourself up to a lawsuit by demanding work.
No.
It's exempt.
These positions
no.
considered to be.
I don't know.
So I guess real quick, so is that amendment you made, or I guess you're trying to insert that into your?
That is an amendment that I.
To make those two people exempt.
That those two positions be exempt positions.
So I have a motion. Do I hear a second to the amendment, for the amendment? Did you?
I second.
You second? Okay. I have a motion, a second. So what we're going to vote on now is the amendment to Ricky's original motion, and that's specifically to add those two employees become exempt employees. Is that correct? Say that,
That's correct.
Randy? Okay. All in favor of the amendment?
Can I ask,
In this
can you
pipeline.
please explain again what our employment lawyer said?
Our employment lawyer advised that those two positions did not have supervisory responsibilities. They did not reach the level, in her opinion, of a professional position with special knowledge such as the GIS guy would have. Job-specific knowledge such as that they do in fact not meet the salary criteria. In other words, there's a salary that for hourly, for exempt, have to meet. They do exceed that amount. But
I started saying they do exceed the salary
yes,
requirement.
they
to
do.
be
Both of them do.
exempt.
Both of them do.
Do we require that they obtain professional certifications?
Yes, I think so.
Yes, it does.
I probably. I mean, I don't know what we do require them to get specific training. I don't know if that leads to an industry-accepted certification or not.
I might mention, in your job summary, it says this is a full-time management level professional staff position. The candidate will be responsible for coordinating activities within this particular one happens to be the Main Street downtown commercial district revitalization. The candidate makes independent decisions, may supervise any necessary temporary employees. That's all criteria
Okay, sir.
for an exempt.
My duty is to inform this council of what I was advised by the attorney. I have done that, sir.
Thank you.
Whatever decision the council makes, I will enforce.
Okay, we have an amendment to the motion, and it's got a second. Proceed to vote. All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, that was 2 noes. Okay. Motion amendment passes. Now we're going to vote on the original motion as amended.
I'd like a roll call vote, please, Mayor.
Okay, any further discussion?
I got one more question. Just make sure Ricky understands. So we feel confident that I know you've done a lot of work. I know these take tons of work to do. That on the 5 positions, we feel confident that these numbers we're suggesting they go into is what the data supports they need to be competitive in those fields, not just because arbitrarily we want to move them to these positions. That's all I need to hear.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It puts them in line with where the other director levels are in their respective steps.
For other reason, no other reason but that, that's why we're making the recommendation.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, we've asked for a roll call vote. Place 1,
Aye.
place 2,
Aye.
Aye.
place 3,
Aye. I forget
Place-
Justin's not here.
place 4,
Aye.
place 5,
Aye.
place 6,
Yes.
place 7,
Aye.
place 8. Motion passes. Thank you very much.
And the last item on our personnel committee report was the evaluation criteria for city manager applicants. Council submitted to the HR manager their top 5 things they would like to see in our next city manager that we can use to evaluate applications as we receive those. The motion, that list was approved unanimously by the personnel committee, and I would make the motion that council approve the same.
Have a motion. I hear a second.
Second.
Any further discussion? Proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Same sign opposed. Motion passes. Thank you. Anything else?
That concludes Personnel Committee.
Mr. Haskey, Finance Chair, Finance Committee.
Yes, sir. Finance Committee met on March 29th. The first item on the agenda was First Financial Bank requirement to have a resolution designating city personnel by name of who the various levels of authority in regards to city bank accounts were presented. The motion was made to move forward to council for approval of a resolution designating Alan Barnes, city manager, and Monica Harris, finance director, with full banking control, which includes signature authority, the ability to open accounts, as well as the ability to designate other staff authority, designating Stacy King, city secretary, and Lisa Slemon, senior accountant, with signature authority, and designating Deanna Saceda, accountant, for inquiry authority. The motion was seconded and passed unanimously, and I will make that in the form of a motion as well to approve the designation of personnel with banking controls and signing authority.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Other discussion? Proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Same sign opposed. Motion passes. Thank you,
The
sir.
other items on the committee were the employee benefits package, as Mr. Thurman had mentioned. Insurance renewal premiums were presented and discussed, and the motion passed unanimously to move forward to council with Blue Cross Blue Shield HSA plan with a total employer contribution of 38,000 HSA accounts, and that'll be discussed later in the city council agenda, and the proposed step plan as well. And that was actually passed in the personnel committee as Councilman Thurman presented the step plan to the full council. And that concludes the finance committee report.
Thank you, sir. At this point, we'll recess to Employee Benefits Trust meeting. I'm going to call to order. All in favor? Everybody's here, so we're going to have going to number 36, item employee benefits for plan year 2022-2023. Who's making the presentation?
I guess I am.
Yes, you are.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, our insurance consultant, Rodney Dryden, presented us with a renewal plan for Blue Cross Blue Shield. Blue Cross Blue Shield, as you will recall, has a 9.9% maximum increase for this year. However, by going out for bid, we received a bid from United Healthcare with about a 6%, 6.5% increase. However, through negotiations with Blue Cross Blue Shield, they brought that down to about 1.35%. We also discussed having the HSA and the PPO plan as presented to both the Finance Committee and the Personnel Committee. Last year, we were charged with council to go to our employee groups and advise them that this current year would be the last year that the PPO plan would be issued or offered. We currently have 19 people on the PPO plan. 19% of our employees are on the PPO plan. I think it's like 35 is actually what it is. Excuse me. But again, staff respectfully recommends that we accept the bid from Blue Cross Blue Shield of Texas, that we have a single plan this year of the HSA plan, and as Mr. Haskey said, a total contribution of $38,000 for HSA cards that will be divided equally amongst those employees.
Any questions for Alan?
I'm sorry, I respectfully recommend that to the Employees Benefit Committee.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, Employee Benefit Trust meeting or the Employee Benefits Committee, are we going to make a motion?
I'm sorry, I have one more question. I
Okay.
have one question. The, down here at the bottom, the proposed responder health program,
Oh.
is that counseling?
Thank you. Yes.
Okay, I wanted to make sure that that was. in
Thank
there.
you for bringing that up.
Okay.
Another thing recommended by the insurance consultant is that we have an opportunity for $5 per first responder. That includes police officers, fire, EMS, dispatchers. We have an opportunity to have them have a peer counseling service. Not only is it peer counseling, but it also has referral to further higher up the mental health chain. It is for them and their spouses. One of the things that are often overlooked are the spouses of our public safety employees. They live with stress every day for what their spouses do. So this program for the $5 per employee also includes the spouses and family. And we do recommend also including that as well.
Okay, staff recommended to the employee trust benefits. Adopting a plan as discussed. Any questions? Do I hear a mo-
I don't think that was included in the motions that came out of the other committees. I don't think it was very, I don't have an issue with it, but we want to make sure that that's included in what, if that's the desire, we.
Yes, sir. As I recall, and my memory is certainly fallible, I thought it was as presented. I apologize. It was in the written documentation, we just didn't discuss it.
Okay.
And I apologize for that.
So the request is to include that in the motion?
That is correct.
And Leanne, did you make that motion? Is that what you did?
No, sir.
Okay, do you have a motion to adopt the proposal?
I'll make the motion as presented with the request just discussed.
Brady makes a motion, there's a second?
Second.
A motion is second, any further discussion? Proceed to vote, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Same sign opposed, motion passes. At this point, we'll adjourn the Employee Trust Benefits meeting and reconvene regular City Council meeting. Consider approval of employee benefits for benefit year 2022, 2023. Do I hear a motion? Darren has made the motion, hear a second?
Second.
Leanne makes seconds it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Same sign opposed, motion passes. Thank you, ma'am. Financial report. Ms. Harris.
Mayor, Council, this is the budget report for our period ending February 28, 2022. We're 5 months into our fiscal year, and the indicators are overall, pretty good. For our property tax, we received 110 in the month of February, which is 29,000 or 4.46% increase over the funds collected last fiscal year to date. We're 94.14% of our budget, which is about 1.15% or 78,000 less than anticipated. However, our sales tax has been really strong, so it more than covers, and we still have 7 months to recoup the rest of that property tax. For our sales tax, received $777,000 in February, which is $210,000 or 6.3% more than the funds collected last fiscal year to date. The amount collected is 48.42% of what we budgeted, and that is 5.21% higher than we anticipated. February 21 was an anomaly, so when you look at the February, you see that we're actually down from last year, but that's because last February there was $276,000 in audit collections, and so when you adjust for that, our February 22 was actually 16% higher than our February 21 if you take that anomaly out. The target budget for operating revenue is $15.2 million. We received $16.7 million in operating revenue fiscal year to date, which is $1.5 million over our target budget, which is due to our sales taxes, our service charges, and other income. The target budget for operating expenditures is $9.5 million. We expended $8.5 million fiscal year to date, which is $987,000 under our target budget. The operating revenue received last year was $15 million as compared to the current $16.7, resulting in $1.7 million increase That's due to our property taxes, our sales taxes, our franchise taxes, the hotel occupancy taxes, the sports venue taxes, service charges, and other income. The operating expenditures last year were 8.4 million, compared to the current year's 8.5 million, which is a 105,000 increase, and that's due to personnel, outside professional services, and maintenance.
Questions for Monica? Thank you, ma'am. Do you have a drum roll? Mr. Sanford. Economic Development Authority report. Where are your sunglasses?
Glad to always be at the end of such a short agenda. Howdy.
You're going to do your part, right?
I do my part.
Good point.
You just do this so I don't get to tell as many jokes or do as many fun things, don't you? Hey, real quick, I am going to leave a lot out. That was all cool and everything. But in 1935, in January of 1935, everybody's favorite performer, Elvis, was born in Tupelo, Mississippi. And you had mentioned Elvis earlier, Doug, or Mayor, before that. One thing, on this date in 1936, that same town, Tupelo, Mississippi, was annihilated by a tornado, killing 216 people. So, not to start off on such a positive note there, but one of the things that I get from that is that in a matter of time, all the good things that are happening could turn on a dime. And I want us to always be careful on what we do and how we do it. You guys have been amazing in watching these things grow. Those sales tax reports that were just given are because of some of the good work that you guys did in helping some of these things open. As you know, on Washington Commons, we already have 5 of the stores open. The parking lots are getting filled up. People are ringing those cash registers, and I think, Mr. Thurman, you even mentioned at one point that there are people spending money here that they're not spending elsewhere, and that's going to continue to go. As an update, Ulta is scheduled to open April the 20th. James Avery will open mid-June. Ross will open sometime in June or July. They start paying rent in June, so it'll be pretty soon. Buckle will open mid-August, and the rest of it is now 100% leased, so we will see those. I can't make those announcements yet, but we'll do so very, very soon. We have a number of other announcements. We are currently, CETA is seeing 1 developer on average per day, new developer for new investment into our community. So all of those things, whenever we talk about that year, when I mentioned the deal about Tupelo, Mississippi, we're still within that first year, so to speak. Maybe not in actual time or chronological time, but we're still in that point where we want to take advantage of all the good things that are happening. As such, we went, CETA staff, along with Mayor Savine, went to ICSC, Red River, which is the International Council of Shopping Centers. Officially, they're changing their name to the Innovating Commerce, Serving Communities, but keeping the ICSC brand. The idea of this was to continue that recruiting mechanism in place. We, on one day, had 14 meetings, appointments with folks looking to invest in our community. The next day, we had another 5. So nearly 20 recruiting meetings to try to get these folks. So I've said before, I've used the words about putting people on the bench or getting our bench filled as we continue to play with the players that are out there. We also want to make sure that this isn't going to end with just those projects that we've already approved or that you've already approved. We want to make sure that we're continuing on with some new ones. I did want to show you, and I think we have the video up. This is let me set it up just for a second, please. A lot of people don't quite get the opportunity. We see just from a street level the kind of 2D version of when a site is getting developed. We have some drone video of the stable development, which is Restaurant Row across the street on Wolf Nursery South. So here's the latest as of this morning, a video of some of the site development work that's going on. You get an idea of the picture of kind of what's going on in that area of the roughly 12 acres. As you see, there's a whole lot more going on, and there will be more, especially with the infrastructure piece. There's buried utilities, there are other sewer, water, those kinds of things that will take place. As that gets developed, particularly around the front end, where the entrance to the development goes, we'll start to see vertical construction on or around June 1st with our first restaurants. So that should, what we're trying to do is get those up before the end of the year. So that's pretty exciting. Some other ones, hopefully, in conjunction with some of these meetings we've had and will continue to have, we hope to get some of those other spots filled by the end of the year. They're primarily selling those parcels. They're not interested at this point in ground leasing. Some of the folks that you talked with earlier that were on Zoom and elsewhere, I think, are looking more for ground lease, although I think the possibility always exists to sell for the right price. This particular project that you guys were involved with is primarily selling the parcels, and so that makes a little bit of difference in who wants to invest in those as well. And all of them, one of the things that we're trying to do in all of our developments is make sure that there's not a lot of poaching going on. Poaching, and by that I mean taking from one part of town and putting into one of our new developments. We like to see something new go in. I think it benefits us more than having an empty building somewhere else. I will say that there was an exception to that. The shoe department has relocated and has opened, by the way, over in Washington Commons, and actually upgraded their model to their high end of the Encore shoe department. It's actually Encore shoe department, but and then their building will get raised or scraped before the end of this month, so to make room for them for some more of that development you just saw. Any other questions from you guys? Oh, I would say also, is on this date in 2011 that A&M women's basketball won the national championship. Thanks so much. All right, anything else?
I did get my steps in that.
Yes, you did. Thank you, guys. Appreciate all the work you're doing.
Thank you, sir. Do I hear a motion on the consent agenda?
Mayor, I'll make that motion.
A motion, I hear a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Consent agenda is approved. Comments from city manager.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I want to remind everybody that on Good Friday, April the 15th, city offices will be closed. A week from that, April 22nd, we kick off our concerts in the park. Excuse me, with Ricky Skaggs. We have council committee meetings on April the 19th. Regular council meeting is May 3rd. The general election is May 7th, which is Saturday. The last day to register to vote is April the 7th. Early voting begins April 25th. I will go back to the last one. The last day to register is this coming Thursday, as in day after tomorrow. The council will canvass the election, and we will have council member reception on Tuesday, the May 17th. And if folks want more information on this, it can be found at www.stephenvilletx.gov.
Thank you, sir. Leanne.
Well, you stole what I was going to say about our Concert in the Park series. It's kicking off the end of the month, and I hope everybody will come out. We've got a lot of great talent that's going to be here through the summer, and we're excited about that. We also have another I don't want to become the music festival person, but we do have another big music festival here at the end of the month, the last week of the month. We have the Larry Joe Taylor Festival that is, I think this is the 30th year, 31st, something like that. So, huge draw to Stephenville, and we're excited about that. And if you're not already registered, get registered to vote.
Justin, you still on? You done? Okay. Darren?
I got nothing.
Ricky?
No comment.
Ricky?
No comment.
Mayor, I had the privilege 2 weekends ago of joining the Texas State Guard for part of their training exercises in the city of Stephenville. In conjunction with Tarleton, they held their training exercises here. There were several courses. I opted for one that was a land navigation course that was out on the Melody Mountain Ranch property. It was very interesting. I was treated as a VIP by those gentlemen and ladies, and I was quite impressed with their skills at navigating using a compass and their search and rescue. the other things that they do routinely that they're on call for from the state of Texas all the time. I was impressed. I got to shake hands with sergeants and majors and generals and corporals and a colonel, and it was an impressive organization, and they were impressive in their organization of how they ran that training. I want to thank Tarleton for cooperating with them and the Melody Mountain Ranch property, of course, but it was an outstanding experience for me, and I want to thank them and give them some credit for what they performed here, but what they do for the state of Texas overall.
Thank you, sir. Gerald?
Just a couple of things. We talked about it a little bit earlier, but in my mind, there were a couple of really major issues here tonight. One of those things has been something we've talked about and talked about and talked about, and thanks to the staff getting it put together, thanks to the council for doing it, and that had to do with the bond issue. I call it a bond issue, certificate of obligation, to do Long Street and to provide water supply for this community for the next 50, 75 to 100 years. Those are big things. They're major, major things. And that this community has talked about, we've talked about for years. And so we've now taken that step to fund them and to do them. And so they're going to get done. And we did them without GO bonds. We did them with using our funds with water and sewer, and also with the hotel tax. And so we're also going to get new ballparks at least one new ballpark, maybe two, in the city park. Those are good things, and they're good things that I think that we've all done. We should be proud of that. The other thing is the state plan, and I'd like to congratulate Ricky here. He has done yeoman's work, has really worked hard working with the staff and putting this together. I know, Monica, you've had a lot to do with this, and Alan and Jason and the rest of the staff too. And so just to say congratulations, this is a milestone, and it's also the framework that hopefully as we try to make things fair and all that gets us there. And so thank you all for that.
Brandon? I want to mention Leanne. She did a great job downtown. It was a tremendous activity. You put a lot of work and heart into that, and all the people who participated in that, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You did something really special there. And Ricky, also, for the time that you put in, I want to make sure we mention Grisham. Last week, I almost forgot his name, that he was involved as well. He was the labor behind it, so I appreciate him working on the pay plan as well. With that, we're going to recess into executive session in compliance with the provision of Texas Open Meetings Law, subchapter D, Government Code Vernon, Texas codes annotated in accordance with section 551.074, personnel matters, and 551.072, deliberation regarding real property, and 551.087 regarding economic development negotiations. We'll be back. Okay, it is 7:56, Stacy, you ready? 7:56, I'll reconvene the city council. We have two motions.
Mayor, make the motion that we appoint Dr. Kelly Doggett as the city's public health official for contract period of 2 years.
Have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second, any discussion? Proceed to vote, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Same sign opposed, motion passes.
Mr. Mayor, I move we enter into the lease agreement as deliberated during executive session.
There a second? Have a motion and a second, all in favor say aye. Aye. Same sign opposed, motion passes. It is 7:57, city council meeting is adjourned.